This podcast contains discussions of child abuse, sexual repression and sexual abuse, suicide, racism, misogyny, PTSD and PTSD symptoms, and spiritual oppression and abuse, including guilt, shame, and fear. In most episodes, we will be mentioning some of these concepts in a general way without any graphic detail. If any of these topics or other triggering topics will be mentioned in great detail, we will let you know at the beginning of each individual episode, as well as in the show notes for that episode.
One additional content warning on this episode, we will be discussing sexual topics because we are talking about the television show Sex and the City. So if you don't want to hear about that, this episode will be a good one to skip.
Rolling river time, you've healed me in too many days. No regrets, no confusion, there'll be no pollution. I'm so thankful I've decided to change my ways.
Welcome back to this homework edition of the Leaving Eden podcast. My name is Gavriel Hacohen, and I am here with my totally awesome co-host.
Hi, I'm Sadie Carpenter.
Hi, Sadie. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I got 100% on my sociology paper.
That's marvelous.
It's the one I tweeted about where I did my sociology paper about clergy abuse and got 100% on it.
Very relevant to our show.
Yeah, and today we're going to talk about a little bit of, I think the term is, what did she call it? Sexual anthropology.
Sexual anthropology.
So I feel very academic.
If you have not guessed by now, or if you didn't listen to the last homework episode, or if you just didn't read the title, today, on this homework episode, I assigned Sadie to watch some episodes of the television program Sex and the City. This show ran on HBO for 6 seasons. They made 2 movies after that. It was sort of, I like to think of it as what The Sopranos did for like high drama, for binge watch high drama type things. Sex and the City, I think, did that for a lot of these shows that we're seeing coming out on streaming platforms today, where they are more romantic, dating based type shows with characters, and that's the main subject of the show in that direction. But, maybe with more vulgarity, more explicit content than we would have seen in the show like Friends. So here we go. Sadie, how much of the show have you watched?
I watched the first 7 episodes.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about mostly season 1. And I wish I had time to watch more episodes. So I'm trying to push for maybe a follow-up in a few months where we talk about the later seasons as well.
Yeah, that'll be fun. And you know what? It's not her fault that she didn't get as far into it because she had a power outage.
Yeah, and let me tell you, while I'm on my soapbox where I get to talk about things and people listen to me on purpose, let me tell you, power outages are not my favorite thing. But during a pandemic and like all the civil unrest and everything, it's just scary. Like even when it's just literally a power outage because there was a lot of wind last night. It's frightening. So, but I am okay. I survived. Everything's good.
We're all fine. The baby's fine. Your husband's fine.
Baby's doing great. Baby is ready to meet the outside world in just a couple months here.
Yeah. So before we get into that,
Baby is kicking me.
Baby is always kicking you in the ribs.
Yeah, baby is always kicking me. It is just once in a while that they get me good enough.
Yeah.
That I can't keep it quiet.
So before we get into talking about the show in great detail, which we will do, there's a couple announcements that we want to say. First, I want to say that the Leaving Eden podcast is a fully independent podcast, and we work hard to bring you 2 episodes every week for your enjoyment. So if you want to support this show, there are things that you can do. You can join our Patreon, where we will have extended episodes and, uncensored episodes for when we have explicit words that we use, the swears that we use that we usually bleep out, those won't be bleeped on our Patreon versions. If you don't want to pay money for our Patreon, that's fine. Just please, you can recommend this show to your family, your friends, your enemies, your coworkers. We really appreciate it because that's the best way that we've been growing our audience. And our audience has been growing significantly of late, which is something we are excited about. The other thing that you can do is join our Facebook group. It's called Eden Exodus. Go to Facebook, search Eden Exodus, and we have we post memes there, we post jokes there, we ask about ideas for episodes, and you can go there, you can message us, leave a comment or something saying, oh, maybe this would be good for a homework assignment. Or you can also email us what you think a good homework assignment would be. But that brings me into this show, because this show is the first time that we have had a homework assignment that was actually suggested by a listener. So we are very excited about that. And I'm sure that our listener, who you know who you are, is very excited about that.
I didn't know this one was suggested by a listener. I think that's super. That probably just means I forgot. But...
Yeah, I said it on air last time and you forgot about it because of your...
Listen, I was a space cadet before.
Yeah.
This isn't completely new.
Yeah.
It's just more obvious now.
Well, she can't remember anything because she's pregnant, and also last time she was super tired because we were because she was also in the middle of like a term in school. So
yeah, the last homework episode we recorded was like right before finals week or during finals week for me. So that was but I was spacey before I was pregnant, so I can't completely blame it on that. No, that's super cool.
Let's get into the show. So this show stars, it has the four main characters. There's four women. There's Carrie, Samantha, Miranda, and Charlotte. And
yeah, the four genders.
Oh yeah, actually, you know what? The fifth gender is New York City.
Oh man.
Because that's the fifth main character of the show, according to fans of the show. Yeah, but there's Carrie, who's played by Sarah Jessica Parker. There's Samantha, who's played by Kim Cattrall. Charlotte is played by Kristen Davis, and then there is Miranda, who is played by Cynthia Nixon. And so I just want to get straight into it. So what did the IFB have to say about this show? Because this show was pretty monumental when it came out. It was very, very popular.
Yeah, and I heard a lot about this show growing up in the IFB. This is definitely something that I recall having heard preachers talk about. The main gist of their issue with the show, from my memory, would have been it's immoral simply even to have a TV show with the word sex in the title on television. HBO in general was kind of a boogeyman within the IFB.
Really?
Yeah, so I heard about HBO like constantly, and I also heard about MTV like constantly, which I think maybe by the time I'm remembering this in like 2003, maybe MTV was a little bit of a dated reference.
That's the sort of thing that I would expect them to be warning you about in the 80s, like where they see the Thriller video on MTV. They're dancing, there's demons, there's zombies, and they're all scared. Oh no, it's the devil coming out of the ground and he's going to get you. And it's right there on MTV and everybody likes it. And it's #1 on the charts.
I don't know whether or not there was preaching about MTV in the 80s. There's a bit of a trend within the IFB that sometimes they don't learn about things that are popular and are also, evil until those things are over.
Well, I'm sure that HBO would have been seen especially as the boogeyman, because it's a channel that you can't get HBO unless you pay specifically for HBO. Mm-hmm. It's not like, oh, I got cable and MTV is one of the channels on cable, but I mainly got cable for ESPN. It's like I paid extra specifically because I wanted to watch HBO because they can swear on there, and then there's sexual content on HBO as well.
See, I think it might actually be the opposite of that.
Really?
Because I think the IFB, and again, I was a kid, so this is kind of going off a vague memory. I think the IFB didn't know that you had to pay extra for HBO.
Really?
I think that they thought that it just came with your cable. So this was used as an example of why cable television is evil
Huh.
and why you shouldn't have cable, because it will allow things like the TV show Sex and the City into your house. So like the perception is that if that is a possibility for you to even get that on your television, then your children are going to somehow find a way to watch it. Because remember, children are evil from day one. Remember that whole thing.
You got to beat that out of them.
Right. So your children, who are naturally evil and inclined to sinfulness, are going to seek out the worst content they can find on your television. So your kids are going to get into HBO. And then that's going to ruin your children.
And I can see why they would have thought that Sex and the City is the worst content that you could watch on television. Because, I mean, let's face it, it is an explicit show in which women talk very openly with one another about sex, sexuality, desires, promiscuity.
Yeah, and I did want to touch on that too. I have been, so this whole morning before leading up to our recording time today, I have been feeling some really intense feelings of shame. I feel ashamed to admit in public that I have even seen this show.
Really?
Which is a little, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm 20, I'm 27, I'm almost 28. By the time this airs, I might have had my birthday already.
No, this is coming out tomorrow.
Oh, is it? Nope, I won't. Okay. No, I'm 27, I'm almost 28, and like I'm having a kid, I'm married, I'm having a kid of my own, but I still feel a little bit of that residual shame. Thinking, oh, some people from my old church or people from my old life might see the title of this episode and might judge me for having even watched this show, even for like research purposes for my podcast.
Is it the sort of thing where even, I don't want to say even knowing what it was, but like even knowing the name of the characters from the show would have been like a symbol or a sign that you were invested in the show enough to know enough about it for it to have an influence on you? Is it that sort of thing?
Yeah. It's the kind of thing where even if you did sneak and watch this, you certainly wouldn't want anybody else ever to find out.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember reading fashion. So I was reading like fashion blogs back in high school and reading about, Carrie Bradshaw wore this or whatever, and thinking like I had to keep it a secret that I even knew the name of her character.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, this show, being set in New York, which is, of course, the fashion capital of North America, fashion clothes play and especially with such a focus on femininity and feminine sexuality, female sexuality, clothes play a very big sort of side role in the show. Fashion plays a very big side role in the show. And so the characters' costumes, what they're wearing, they're always talking about, okay, I'm going out with this guy and I really like him. So like, and they're like, well, how much do you like him? And then somebody would say, like, I bought a $2,000 dress for him to see me in, like that sort of thing, And
well, fashion and consumerism.
And then I had to get shoes that went with the dress, and that was another $400. Like that's the kind of thing that we're talking about.
Right. And Carrie's very into designer shoes, which is kind of like one basic aspect of her character. And I know that's going to get explored as I continue watching the show.
Yeah, but who doesn't love designer shoes? Come on.
Listen, I'm a very practical person when it comes to shoes. I mostly wear Doc Martens and that's like my main shoe brand. But even I would love to have at least one pair of nice designer shoes.
I know almost nothing about women's shoes. I know quite a bit about men's shoes, men's fashion, that sort of thing. Women's fashion, I know if somebody looks nice. I don't know the brands. I don't know except for like a few very, very big ones.
Which is funny to me because a lot of the men that I know that have, like my dad has a very strong eye for men's fashion. just a very good sense for it. But he's also got an excellent eye for women's fashion.
Really?
He can put together an outfit better than I can.
That's a valuable skill to have if you are a man. Pay attention to women's fashion. It's not gay, and even if it is gay, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the sort of thing. Pay attention to. I mean, we're men. We act like we're not concerned with how things look, but we definitely are concerned with how things look, and we do care about that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just thought it was. I think it's interesting, like how good you are at men's fashion.
Oh well, thank you.
It's a little unusual to me that you don't have the same strong eye for women's or feminine fashion.
Like I know when I see somebody, I think, oh wow, look at her. But I don't. I just haven't looked enough into it to know all of the different designers, what they're known for. That's what we're talking about here.
Then again, we live in Portland, and women don't wear like designer clothes in Portland. Like that's not a thing.
Either that, or they will, but it will be like micro brand designer clothes, or like athleisure designer clothes. So it's very expensive and fancy clothes that are made to look like they're almost minimalist in their nature, in that,
like my awesome water bottle leggings. Like I have these super, super cool like yoga pants leggings that are made out of recycled water bottles.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so they're 100% zero waste, and then the dye that they use to dye them is compostable, so it doesn't dye the water system.
Interesting.
That they use to dye the fabrics, and then the factory is in Vietnam, and they pay their workers a fair living wage, and they provide meals and healthcare for their workers. But like stuff like that, like that's what's cool in Portland, not like some designer name.
Yeah. No, but I want to go into the clothes, because the clothes are a very big part of this show. But also I want to talk about, so this show, it debuted in 1998. So HBO, about a year earlier, it had big shows on it before. It had shows that were, but it had The Sopranos on it starting in 1997, and that was a huge hit for the critics. And then they had Sex and the City starting in 1998, which was also a huge hit. But basically, because this show is set in the late 90s, the men's fashion in this show, I don't know if you noticed this. Did you notice this?
I don't know. You haven't told me what I did or didn't notice yet.
So if you look at the men in this show, they're always like, oh man, that guy is super hot. And then they'll show the dude and he will be wearing a suit that is so unbelievably baggy.
Yeah, I did notice that. It's like there was some kind of like oversized trend going on.
Well, that's what it was in the 90s, in like the late 90s, early 2000s. That was the look. That was big, that was in. And then they would have the men, like every time they were like, oh man, that guy is super hot, and then they'd show him, and then there would be like, that guy is super gross, he doesn't look very good. And the guy that they say doesn't look very good would always, like, to me, I'm like, I'm like, that guy looks better than the guy that you're fawning over. Like that guy, with that looks a bit scruffy, that's like got maybe shorter hair, that doesn't have like the Donald Trump in the 90s haircut. Yeah, that's like the look. And they're like, oh man, that's attractive. And I'm just like, really?
Yeah.
That's what you find attractive?
Yeah, I haven't run into any men on this show so far that I felt like were worth writing home about.
No.
But like, is that kind of part of the thing? Like, do they just encounter kind of crappy men?
That is kind of a recurring
theme.
Kind
of the thing about this show
is that they'll be like, I went out with an investment banker, and then surprise, surprise, the investment banker turns out to be like a total, like not just a tool, but the entire shed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I really liked the tone of how they do this though, because to me it didn't come off as like all men are terrible, or like men aren't worth your time. Just
the ones that we're attracted to.
It came off more as like, why are we attracted to cruddy men? And why are cruddy men always attracted to us? And don't we deserve something better than this in a relationship? Which I thought was a lot more fair, because I am very willing to speak out against toxic masculinity and like the way that masculinity is treated in the United States, but I'm not the kind of person to say that all men are terrible.
And I think that that's a very fair point to make. But it's very funny to me, and they're just like going for these because they want the guy that, because you know they're in New York City, we're in Portland, Oregon, where maybe status isn't worth so much. Where you could be like, oh, I'm a teacher, but my wife is a doctor. Like that's the type of vibe that we have here, where you know you can be middle class, and then you're gonna like you can marry or date people who are significantly more well off than you, and that's not a thing that's particularly uncommon here. But it seems like like in New York, at least during the late 90s, the vibe that I got was that these women, these are professional women who, you know, have apartments, high tastes as far as clothing, expensive tastes as far as clothing, and they, you know, they dine out all the time, so they've got to have quite a bit of money coming to them, and they're all professional. So I think Miranda is a lawyer, Charlotte is works at an art gallery as like a curator, Samantha is in event planning, and Carrie is a syndicated columnist. So they're all like professional women, and so they're making decent money. And so they're also looking for men that make good money, but they're looking for the guy that's like, he's rich and he's very nice to me and he wants to get married and he has a good relationship with his mother and he isn't too sexually deviant, is basically the thing that they're all looking for.
Yeah. And I like that that we're showing the lives of professional women, and this show does one thing that Friends never did well, which is show how do these people have the money to afford these apartments.
I was actually having a conversation with somebody today about I was talking to her, I was like, I am not a fan of the show Friends because all of the characters are terrible people.
Yeah, but like the big question of Friends though is like how do they live where they live?
Right.
And I feel like the Sex and the City did a lot better job, like of feasibly, you know, there's at least a suggestion that this could possibly be where somebody who is a lawyer or an event planner or whatever lives. So I liked that. I also liked just showing women in professional jobs. I feel like I'm hoping they'll get a little bit more into Miranda's law career.
They do. She eventually makes partner.
Oh, good. And like what she like, because I know that there's a lot of feminist issues to be raised there. And I like how this show does it, at least in the very beginning. What I was going to ask you though is like what wasn't clear to me from the episodes that I watched. Are these women actively pursuing marriage and family? Or are they pursuing like a long-term monogamous something?
I think it depends on which woman we're talking about.
Okay.
So, and that's going to take us into talking about basically, because there's four main characters, right? We have Carrie, we have Samantha, we have Miranda, and we have Charlotte. Carrie is the columnist who writes a sex column in a magazine. She is looking for a serious relationship. She is looking for love, and when she I don't think she's like rushing into the idea of getting married, but she wants to fall in love with somebody and have that and eventually get married to them. I think that's sort of what
So she wants, like, she's looking for somebody who like she'll date for a year and then move in with and like have dinner party where other couples come over.
Yeah.
And like that kind of like more domestic, but not necessarily matrimony.
Well, I think she wants to get married eventually. That's part of the show. We have Samantha, who it has no particular interest in monogamy whatsoever. Samantha is the one where, you know, they will be at breakfast and somebody will say, oh, I wonder if this comes with pickles. And then Samantha will be like, I came with a big pickle last night.
Ugh.
And then they'll be like, hey-o. And then they'll all high five, or they might like roll their eyes.
See, Samantha immediately endeared herself to me for one reason. She is the least swerfy of the four
That's
main
true.
characters, and I really appreciate that for people
Because
who don't
we
know
have to remember. We have to remember that this is the 90s. So trans issues, non-binary issues, gender non-conforming issues, those were not things that were in the mainstream of feminist discourse yet.
Right. And there's an episode where sex work is kind of brought up in a very funny way, I thought. But the three other main characters are kind of different levels of creeped out or not ready to accept the idea of sex work. And Samantha's like, hey, yeah, you do you.
Yeah.
As long as everybody's consenting.
Samantha is a fun character for that reason.
Oh, I had to explain my term. If you don't know the term SWERF, sex work exclusionary radical feminist.
Oh, sorry. I thought I confused Swerf with Turf, because there's also a different episode where she talks about
They're usually the same people. It's fine.
the Venn diagram is usually not quite a circle, but it's close to a circle.
Yeah. And then both of those categories are inside people that I don't like.
Sorry, it just totally slipped my mind. I know, but I know both of those terms.
But no, so a SWERF is somebody who is feminist but doesn't believe that any form of sex work can ever be empowering or validating to a woman, which I disagree with, because I think that the core value of feminism is that women can do what women want to do, and that they, like, each individual person is the boss of their own body.
And that's sort of one of the big points of this show, which I think we'll get into later. But basically, I want to finish introducing the main characters, is that Miranda is, I think, out of the four of them, she has the most, I don't want to say professional, because they're all professional in what they do. They all do their jobs very well. But she is a lawyer. So she is the most, I guess, professional from like a conservative standpoint. You see, you know what I'm saying? She has the most
traditional career.
Yes. She is a career woman. She does often focus her life on long-term relationships, but she does it very much from a more pragmatic perspective, as opposed to the fourth character, who is Charlotte. Charlotte, I believe, is craving the domesticity. Charlotte wants to fall in love, get married, have kids. That's like her calling.
I think that's fine. I wish they hadn't. I felt like that kind of gave them an excuse to portray her as weak. And I think that gives me this sense that maybe they're trying to portray all women who want marriage and want a family as weak. That could just be me projecting, but that was something I wasn't so much of a fan of.
Well, I think that Carrie and Charlotte both want marriage and both want a family, but they want it in different ways. Where Charlotte is like, I want this. This is like the thing that I'm actively going out and searching for. And Carrie is more like, I want the validation, and then this is something that is going to come with that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, so those are the four characters. And so basically the formula for the episode, for the formula for the show, will be that there will be one main topic that they will talk about, and then they will show all four of those characters experiencing that topic in different ways that sort of intertwine with each other. I'm trying to think of a good example of this, but I can't remember which episodes that you've seen. But they'll basically have a subject that Carrie is writing her sex column on, and then Carrie will experience one thing, Samantha will experience a different thing, Miranda will experience a different thing, and Charlotte will experience a different thing, but they'll all sort of be related to this one topic, and that will be the topic that Carrie is writing about in her sex column, like during the voiceover. And I think that this is an extremely cool narrative technique, because it's conducive to telling a good story and making a story that sort of is succinct and feels like it's going somewhere, so you can very easily get a beginning, middle, and end, and then multiple different perspectives on it.
I agree. I really thought the framework of having it be, this is something that Carrie's writing about in her sex column, and then it affects, like, that thing will affect everybody. There was one about 20-something guys.
Yes, that's something that I was talking about. They were talking about 20-something guys where
they all kind of so Carrie is writing about how she feels a little bit out of place because she feels like the men her age or a little bit older than her are, like, all the quality men from that age group are kind of already settled down or married, and she struggles to find somebody in her age group, but she feels like these 20-something guys are a different thing. Like, they're kind of fascinated with, I'm with an older woman, even though she's, like, I don't know, 32.
She's like 30, 31, 32 in this show.
And they're like 25.
Like, yeah.
But, like, she feels like, these younger guys are, like, a different, it's something that she really enjoys, like, going out with these younger guys because it's a different experience than the guys her age who she sees as maybe a little bit boring.
And then so she'll be like,
so she's writing a column about it.
Yeah,
right, and then all four of the girls eventually end up in some kind of permutation of 20-something guys throughout the episode.
Yeah, so, like, Samantha will be like, I say take them as young as they come because that's when they're at peak strength or some nonsense like that. You know what I'm saying? And then
right.
Yeah, and then Miranda, I don't know what happened in that episode. What happened to Miranda?
I don't recall. What I remember is Samantha kind of being like, though I like the one thing I like about Samantha, the way she speaks, it's like she's thought about it before. Like, she probably hasn't, but the way she makes this declaration about what she thinks about 20-something guys, the way she says it, it comes off like this is a life philosophy that I've had for the past 10 years.
Yes.
And she probably totally isn't. She's probably just making it up as she talks.
She has a very proper way of talking, though, and it makes it like she is hilarious.
She sounds like an expert, and she sounds like she's thought everything through beforehand.
There's, like, a later, like, she is clearly like, part of her character is that she is the most sexually experienced out of all four of the women in the show, and so she sometimes is like, oh, I'm an expert on this because blah 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 blah.
I like her confidence.
Oh, she's got so much confidence, and it's hilarious where guys will come up to her and then they'll be like, hey, and then she'll be like, no. Leave. And then she'll be like, no, you're the one I want. And then she'll, like, invite that to, she'll be like, you're the one I want to talk to and you're the one I want to hook up with. She's hilarious.
I think her confident personality is just really adds a lot to the show as a whole.
She's very entertaining.
So that's my other reason that I really like her, aside from her being a more inclusive type of feminist.
She is very much more inclusive than the others. I think that Charlotte is the most conservative, but I don't think that's coming from a place of hate or of discrimination. She's just like, well, no, this is what. But this is how this is supposed to be, and this is how this is supposed to be. And like, when she is confronted with something that's not what she's used to, she's like, oh, how deviant. And Samantha's like, please.
Which is an interesting thing that they made her the artist.
Yeah.
Because I think it would have been more stereotypical for the one who's the most conservative to have certainly not been in the arts. I thought that was kind of neat.
She's not so much an artist as she is. She's an art she's an art fan. She's an art curator,
right? But I mean, we assume that she went to college for some kind of art related degree,
for like art history or something like that. Yeah. But there's, I remember which episode was it? There was an episode where there is this artist that is painting pictures of vaginas. He's like, this is where all the power in the world comes from.
That guy was way over the top, but his wife was hilarious.
He's like this old, like, hippie artist type guy, and his wife is like, she's like the old woman who you would expect to be married to this old type, beatnik hippie guy.
just cracked me up.
And yeah, and so this guy's like, the vagina is where all of the power in the universe comes from. It has the power to give life. It is the thing that we most desire. And so he will get women to pose for him, and he'll paint like this like
abstract
impressionist
kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and so he asks Charlotte to pose for him, and she's like, "Oh, should I do it? Should I not do it?" Like, that's her thing. She's like, "Oh, would that be too indecent or too vulgar?" And she eventually does it, and then it's hanging in the gallery. And
well, the thing is, no, that's not the end. The end is that she doesn't feel confident enough to say out loud, you're like, "Oh, well, which one are you?" So the paintings are numbered, like number 1 through number 14. And the girls are all asking her, like, which one did you model for? And she doesn't feel confident enough to even say, like, the number out loud to all 3 of her friends at once. But she, like, goes from friend to friend and whispers in their ear, like, it was this one. And she looks happy and proud with her decision. And I thought that was just great. Like, she doesn't have the confidence to, like, be very outward about the fact that she's happy that she did this modeling.
I wouldn't say it's confidence. I would say it's whether she's comfortable with it.
But it's very clear based on her body language that she's not upset that she did it. Like, she's happy that she did it.
Yeah, she thinks it was a validating experience, not an objectifying one.
Right, and I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I thought.
So I have a question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that's sort of how this show ends up going, is that these 4 characters will sort of present as different sort of perspectives with which to view a single issue. And then what will often happen is that they will end up sort of meeting in the middle with some sort of, I guess, not high truth, but some sort of like thesis statement or conclusion about whatever the subject of the episode is.
There's a conclusion.
Yeah, so what will happen will be Charlotte will often be the one who's like, "Oh, I'm going to be more conservative about this," but then she's confronted with something that doesn't work out so well. She's also portrayed as maybe being the most naive of the 4 of them. And so she'll be confronted with something, and then she'll maybe learn to accept something that's a little bit outside of her comfort zone. Samantha, oftentimes, she'll be like going all the way out with some weird sex thing. And then, like, there's one episode where she's sleeping with a man who takes Viagra not because he needs it, but like takes it recreationally. And she gets addicted to sex with Viagra.
Oh, man.
Yeah, this is a much later episode. And then she realizes, she's like, "Oh, no, this is too crazy. I can't handle, like, I have to stop because otherwise I'll just be, like, ruining regular sex."
Wow. That's why I'm going to keep watching this show, because I feel like that is... Okay, so yeah, that is... This clearly scandalous to have on television 20 years ago. Like, clearly this is, like, to some extent, it is kind of like pearl clutching bait. You know what I mean? I do get the feeling that some of these plot lines were manufactured to, like, get the pearl clutchers clutching their pearls. However, like, that's not a plot that doesn't deserve to exist. Like, that sounds like there could be some genuine moments and some funny moments in it.
Yeah, so that's another thing that I want to talk about, is that because if you have a platform like HBO where you are not limited by censorship, so you can show nudity on TV, you can use swear words all you want, then what you end up having is especially 20 years ago, 22 years ago, 23 years ago, when this show was first airing, you have all of this room to do like a serial show about these characters in a way that has not been done before. And so that's one of the reasons why this show was so groundbreaking, because, there had been movies with this sort of thing before, but there hadn't been a serial television show like you would watch, like a Friends, but with nudity and swear words and much more explicit content. And so that ended up being kind of the focus of the show, because if you haven't seen something before, if something hasn't really been done before, then the first people to do it, that's really going to be something that's moving the conversation forward and moving the way that this specific topic is being portrayed on TV forward.
So, speaking of the portrayal on TV and kind of the public opinion about this show, I wanted to ask, do you have a concept of how many people watched this? Okay, so I'm thinking of specifically The Bachelor, which is kind of the the feminine coded TV show on right now. I feel like a lot of my friends watch The Bachelor, but only a few people are willing to admit it. I've worked in offices where everybody came in on the morning after The Bachelor aired and was like, "Oh my gosh, did you see this, that, and the other? Did you see that so and so didn't get a key to the fantasy suite or whatever?" But I've also been in groups where people felt ashamed that they watched The Bachelor, didn't really want to, like, they felt like they were compromising their
purity, piety.
No, feminism.
Oh, okay.
People felt like they were owning up to being a bad feminist if they admitted to watching The Bachelor. So I know that we were both kids really when this show came out, but do you have a concept of, like, did everybody watch this and talk about it, or did everybody watch this but only half the people talked about it? Do you have a concept of that?
I'll tell you what I know is that one of my roommates, I mentioned to him, "Oh, I'm going to be watching a bunch of Sex and the City this week." And he's like, "Oh, dude, my ex-girlfriend, she loved that show. I've seen every episode of it because she always had it on in the background." So that was the sort of thing that it was. And then I mentioned to a couple of other people, "Oh, we're doing Sex in the City. I've been watching a bunch of Sex in the City." And they would say things like, "Oh, really? Oh, that'll be really interesting. Yeah, I've seen that show. I've seen this, that, and the other." And so people talked about it. I guess these are people that I haven't, because I hadn't watched the show before. And I guess this show is maybe a little bit older than I would have been watching it. If I had been, 10, 15 years older, then this is the sort of thing that people my age would have been watching. But people have seen it. A lot of people have seen it from our generation and from the generation older than us. So I don't know if it's that sort of thing, but I get the feeling like people would watch Sex in the City and then they would be like, the next morning, they would have brunch with their friends and they'd be like, "Did you see what Carrie did on Sex in the City this week? How about Miranda? Oh, Samantha, she's always so scandalous." That's the sort of thing that I could see.
So the vibe that we're getting is that people were a little bit more happy to talk about their involvement with this show.
Well, yeah, and I don't know how women talk about sexuality with it, like, between themselves. I don't know if this is an accurate representation because I've never been there for that conversation. Where it's
I would
just
say it's
women.
like the way the four main characters talk to each other.
Would you say that it's somewhat accurate?
Yeah. It's not. I would say it's not inaccurate. There are definitely different friend groups have vastly different ways of relating to each other and topics that come up and topics that don't come up. But it's not outside the realm of reality for sure. Like, there are definitely female friend groups that function very much like the one shown on the show.
And so my question about that is whether or not this was portraying something that already existed very heavily, or it was its portrayal of something maybe that existed in smaller scale.
You're asking the chicken or the egg question.
Yeah, I'm asking the chicken or the egg question. But regardless of that, if this show is either something that influenced that to happen in broader culture as a whole, or it was the first real representation of that we got to see in this manner. And either way, that makes this show deeply monumental.
Yeah, I think this show is probably a little bit of both. Like, I think it's showing a type of female friendship that already existed. But I also think that it probably had an effect on the next generation of how we speak to each other.
Yeah.
I think it's both.
We're going to take a small break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to go take up the offering. And then we're going to come back and talk about a few other things. I'm going to find out. We're going to talk about whether we're Carrie, Miranda, whether I'm a Carrie, a Miranda, Samantha, Charlotte, who Sadie is. And so that's going to be pretty fun. All right, welcome back. We are here. Thank you for waiting. We are here talking about Sex and the City, the television program that aired for 6 seasons on HBO. I'm going to get right into it. So, Sadie.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about, because there is 4 archetypical characters here, and one of the big things that people do is they're like, oh, I'm a Carrie. Oh, I'm a Samantha. Oh, I'm a Miranda. Oh, I'm a Charlotte. And they identify with one of the 4 characters. So I wanted to ask you, and you're free to ask me as well. Actually, you know what we should do? We should guess who we're going to say that we identify as.
Okay, I'm gonna try to guess who you would say that you are.
Do you want me to guess first, or do you want to guess first?
You go first.
Okay. I'm wondering. Okay, I think I have 2 answers, because I have one character who I think that you're going to say that you are, and then the character who I see you as is different from the character who I think that you're going to say that you are. Okay.
Okay, let's do that.
I think that you were going to say that you are a Samantha, but I think that you're a Carrie.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
See, I feel like I'm about 60% Miranda, 40% Samantha.
Really? That's an interesting combination right there.
I mean, it is, but I do have, like, I have some very type A academic traits, and I really appreciate Miranda's practicality, because I think Samantha she romanticizes things.
She does.
Like, she romanticizes kind of I think in her head, okay, Samantha has main character syndrome. In her head, like, she's definitely the main character. And Miranda's a little bit too practical for that. But I think personality-wise, I have a little bit more of Samantha.
See, can I tell you?
Like, externally. So go ahead, tell me what you think.
I tell you why I said that? So, the reason why I thought that you would say that you are a Samantha is because of all of the things that we were talking about earlier, where Samantha is, as far as her views go towards sex work, towards queer identities, because there's a very early episode where they're talking about, like, I want to say pansexuality, and there's a part of the episode where Samantha's like, yes, in the future it's just going to be who you're attracted to, not what gender they identify with. And I was like, that's the type of thing that I could hear you saying, though. And that, to me, I was
you're
like,
right.
Yeah. And I'm like, that was something that cued that into me. The reason why I say that you are a Carrie is because I think that out of the 4 of them, Carrie is the most inquisitive. Carrie is always going to be the one who's asking the questions. And maybe that's because she's the one who's the professional writer and that's her job. And also because you're the person who, you have strong tendencies towards, and previously you had strong aspirations to be a journalist. And so her as the columnist, I thought that was the thing that suited you the best. And also, when I look at our friendship, like, I'm like, okay, if I were neutral in this, if I were none of the 4 of them, who would Sadie be to me? And I think that, Sadie, you would be the Carrie who, maybe you aren't always the one giving advice, but you definitely know a lot. Samantha's always the one who's trying to give advice, but maybe her advice is, like, low-key ratchet. And so I don't necessarily think that you're always going to be the one who's giving that advice to just be like, yeah, go off, be ratchet, do that. You're going to be a bit more sensible.
Tends to talk out of her. Yeah, she talks out of her ass. That I can see.
But she's very confident when she does it, so it seems like she's like, she knows what she's talking about. And so I could definitely see, like, somebody being like, yeah, Samantha said this, Samantha said that, so that's why.
So minus the aspect of her potentially inflammatory advice giving tendencies.
Yes.
I think personality-wise, you might kind of be a Samantha. That's what I think.
You think I'm a Samantha?
Okay.
Okay.
Listen.
Who did you think that I would identify as?
So I don't know who you would say for yourself.
Take a guess. See if you can take a guess to see who. Okay, so knowing me, who would I say that I'm the most like?
I don't know. There are like disqualifications for each person.
Okay, so what do you think are the disqualifications for my personality?
Okay, so I feel like you wouldn't say you're a Charlotte because you wouldn't want to be seen as. I think you wouldn't want to be seen as too traditional.
I think that's a fair point.
And you also like, okay, so like your no good morning text thing, which I know you've said on the show.
Oh,
before.
yeah, where I say if you send me a good if
don't send you a good morning
if you're
text.
a girl
like
and
if you're in a
we're going
with
out and you send me a good morning text, I will not respond to your good morning text until after 12:30 in the afternoon, just so that it isn't a good morning text anymore. That's just a thing that I do. Sorry.
It's hey, listen. One of us is married and one of us isn't. That's all I have to say about this.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say anytime you bring up that good morning text thing. So I feel like that would disqualify you from saying that you're a Charlotte.
Because Charlotte is the type to send a good morning text and to want to receive a good morning text.
Yes, exactly. I feel like you wouldn't say you're a Miranda because I think you would see that I think you would perceive her as too stuffy. I don't, but I feel like because I like her, she kind of has a cutting wit sometimes.
See, Miranda, I'll tell you.
I like that.
Miranda is the character who I most identified with. Mostly because there was an episode later, I think in season 3. I got all the way to season 3. Miranda is walking down the street. There's and she's walking past this sandwich shop, this like Subway or something. And there's a dude outside the sandwich shop wearing a costume of a giant sandwich. And he's like, "Eat me." And he says that to her, and he says that to her, and then she gets mad. Like he says it to her every time she walks by, and she gets mad. And then she walks into the sandwich shop and says to the manager, she's like, "The guy outside is sexually harassing me. He keeps saying 'eat me' every time I walk by." And the guy's like, "Yeah, he says 'eat me' because he's a sandwich." But then she's also like a little bit turned on by the sandwich, and then she's like talking to Carrie on the phone, and there's this one line where she says, "I can't be sexually attracted to a sandwich. Can I?" And when I hear her say that line, I'm just like, yeah, that's me.
You know, for that, I think I might be willing to amend my judgments in your favor.
Yeah, no, Miranda is the one who's like, I'm going to buy a nice condo for myself. I'm going to buy this. I'm going to buy that. Like,
that's true. Miranda is less obsessed with being in other people's company.
Yeah.
Than other characters.
And, you know, a few years ago, maybe, you know, I did not know how to function when I didn't have other people around me. And now I'm just like, please get everyone else away from me. I will summon you when I want to talk to you.
That's big Taurus energy, though.
Oh, it is big Taurus energy. See, that's why because when I was like, I did research into this. I was like, who do I most identify with? And I found this website that was like, which Sex and the City character are you based on your zodiac sign? As they do.
Oh, I want to see that.
Yeah. And I think Samantha was either Aries or Sagittarius because duh. But I'm a Taurus. I identify heavily with Taurus energy, and Miranda was definitely the most Taurus. So that's why I'm just like, I need to think about this. But then that's the thing that factored into my decision. But go ahead. What were you saying about Carrie and Miranda, and why you think I'm a Samantha?
Oh, I think before the can I be sexually attracted to a sandwich statement. I think in the early episodes, Miranda comes off as a little bit more, because you hear lawyer and the first thing you think of is like, oh, that's somebody who's kind of might be a little bit stuffy or boring.
Yeah.
And then with Carrie, I think you wouldn't say you are a Carrie because I thought you would probably reserve that for me for the same reasons that you because I'm a researcher and like inquisitive asking questions, kind of see myself as an armchair anthropologist.
You thought that I thought that you would be a Carrie. You thought that I would identify you as a Carrie, but really you're half Samantha, half Miranda in your heart.
That's what I think, but also I could be totally off. Who knows?
We're going multiple levels of 3D chess here, but okay. So tell me, why do you think I'm a Samantha?
I think she's vain.
I wouldn't say she's vain. She knows how good she looks. That's the difference.
That is it. Precisely my point.
Yeah, I mean, there's an episode where Charlotte's like, I can't stand the way that my thighs look. I need to exercise more. And I'm just like, that would never be me. I'm like...
So, I mean, it's the self-confidence for me that associates you with her. Specifically, though, like, it's this specific brand of vanity that is not judging others. Like, there's a brand of vanity that's like, I look good and you'll never look as good as I do. So, like, you suck because you don't look as good as me. And that's not it. Like, that's not what you or Samantha portrays in my mind. You just portray this very like, I look so good.
Yeah.
And like, that's the end of it. There's not a judgment on other people. It's just like, yeah, I look great.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I think that particular brand of confidence that's not putting other people down at all, but is just like insanely confident. That's what associated her with you for me. Also, I love this entire conversation.
I love this entire conversation too.
Well, no, let me tell you why. Because, and you can tell our listeners that this is absolutely true. What would you say? Half of our texts to each other start with dude and or bro.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we call each other off mic.
60%.
Yeah. So this is like the other side of that.
Yeah. You know what? Here's the thing, though, is that our friendship transcends classical gendered friendships. You know what I'm saying?
Our friendship has a lot of like levels that are not like typical of gendered relationships, because and like the number one is that we mostly call each other dude.
Yeah,
and bro.
Also, though,
you are the only and I wanted to tell you this on air. You're the only person, the only dude identifying, male identifying person who's ever called me bro and it felt right. It's like, you call, like, other male identifying people call me bro and I'm like, yeah, that's nice. You call me bro and it just feels right.
That's funny. That's you know what, that says everything about this relationship here. That's
it.
Yeah. Like, that's the thing, though. I think that part of that has to do with the fact that we are while I am definitely like a cisgendered man who identifies very much as male, I am perfectly happy to subvert gender roles when I feel like it and not really care about it.
You have what they call a feminine side.
I do, and I'm not ashamed of it. I don't care. Like, I don't care whether people like want to make fun of me for that, because they're like, if they're making fun of me for that, that's just like them speaking from a place of insecurity and they suck. And I understand that you know, with regards to, you are very much an open-minded person when it comes to gender, when it comes to sexuality and that sort of thing. So while you may in your life take on roles that are traditionally feminine, that is not something that you see as limiting. That is not something that you view as like a cage for how you identify yourself or how you show yourself to other people.
Right. Gender is not a box that I feel like I want to be inside of.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't really see like activities as gendered. Like, you know, baking or sewing or whatever.
And they shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I have like strong feminine traits and also some strong not feminine traits.
Yeah, but I want to back up a little bit because we were talking about fashion there. Briefly, we were talking about fashion.
Yeah, that was like a million years ago. But okay.
Yeah, about my taste for fashion and my taste for men's fashion. And I want to talk about somebody who has terrible men's fashion and is also probably the worst character on the entire show. And this is a guy who Carrie meets in the first episode, and he keeps showing back up again.
I know you.
This is a guy, if you watch the show, if you have seen the show, his name, he is known as Mr. Big. She always calls him Big. She never refers to him by his name. He's always Big.
And I'm
big,
guessing
big.
I'm guessing like the entire show he never gets a name.
I don't know. I haven't gotten to the end of it yet. But there was like a scene at one point where Carrie was out with her boyfriend who she's dating after she dates Big, and Big gets married to somebody else. And she sees Big and his new wife out when she's with her boyfriend, and she tries to introduce them, and she's like, "Oh, this is," and then he gets coffee spilled on him and you never hear his name. It's one of those.
Okay, so it's like one of those things. Listen, I hate this guy.
He sucks. He's the worst.
I hate him. The way he like plays mind games it's so inappropriate.
Yeah, so the thing about this character, he is played by Chris Noth, who I've seen every single episode of Law and Order, and I really liked Chris Noth in Law and Order. He was in like the first 7 seasons of Law and Order.
Wait. Oh my god.
Yeah, he was one of the cops.
I knew I'd seen him before.
I can't remember what his cop's name was. For the life of me, I can't remember it. He, for one season, I think he was partnered with Jerry Orbach, and then he left because of I think he beat up he attacked. There was a case that was like based on the Harvey Milk case. There was an episode that was based on Harvey Milk, and the dude didn't end up getting convicted. And then Chris Noth got written off the show because he assaulted the guy who was the killer after the trial. Because he was definitely a killer. He definitely did it, and it was because he was prejudiced. But I liked Chris Noth in Law and Order, and so he shows up in Sex and the City. I'm like, oh, I like this guy. I liked him in that show, and then he's just like the biggest scumbag.
He's like one of the few handsome men so far on this show, too.
So he's handsome, but all of his clothes are terrible. Because it's that 90s suit situation. Like, look at the pants, okay? Look at the pants. And you can see that, like, the pants are so baggy. It's like, and they, like, pool around your ankles. It's horrible.
See, I think I've been so overwhelmed with hatred for this man that I haven't had time to criticize his fashion sense.
I think in the first episode, they call him, like, the next Donald Trump.
Oh God. Yes, I think you're right. But this guy... And I have no issue with appropriate age gap relationships. I think the portrayal in this show, Carrie is early 30s, he's mid 40s.
Yeah.
Is that about
right?
No,
he's I think 42 or something, or like 41, 42.
That is so not an inappropriate age gap. Especially because neither one of these people is Carrie's not financially dependent on her older partner. This isn't an age gap that should be a cause for concern.
It's not the age gap that's the cause of concern. It's everything else about their relationship that's a cause for concern.
The thing is that he uses his age gap and Carrie's perception that he is more mature than she is, and her perception of his money. He uses those things as tools of power over her, and he plays mind games with her. And that stinks. Yeah. I hate it. I hate it so much. I do not like this guy. He is a pretentious asshole. And I feel like if there's anything that would ruin my enjoyment of the show, it's him.
So what he will do is he will like show up into Carrie's life and he'll be like, I'm 42 and I'm really mature. I know how to handle my emotions.
I know things.
I'm successful. I'm rich. And then she's like, ooh, look at him. He's rich. He's successful. I'm attracted to that. And then she'll like, but then his whole thing is he's like, well, I'm mature. And the fact he'll say that he's mature, and his maturity will be like, well, I've matured past the point where I need to like outwardly express my emotions. But then really that's just him being emotionally unavailable to her. And then he'll make it seem like when she's like, I need these signifiers from you that our relationship is going somewhere, he will be like, oh, I thought that we were more mature than that. I thought that we were that we were above that like childish, like teenage love thing. And then she'll like, yeah. And then she'll be like, oh, I never realized this guy understands more things than I do. And then the way that I experience things is not as good as him because he's older than me. But really, he's just masking his complete emotional unavailability as maturity. And because he knows that he doesn't want to be emotionally available to her, he acts really manipulative and towards her to try and be like, oh, well, you shouldn't have expected those things from me to begin with.
Like, he doesn't want to be emotionally available, but he wants like all of the benefits of her being his girlfriend.
Yes, he wants all
but he
the
doesn't
sex,
want to give
he wants
her
the time, he wants
the time, the energy, the couple-y dates that you don't do unless you're committed to somebody. You know, that the going to IKEA together in modern terms.
Yeah. Ooh.
Like, he wants all of that, but he doesn't want to like provide for her emotional needs. And that's not maturity.
No.
Like, I think one big reason that women,
that's just being a taker.
Yeah. Like, one reason that women date older men is because, you know, a lot of women who are family minded or like ready to settle down, looking for marriage or looking for children. Like, that's one reason that women will date older men. But also because, you know, older men typically have been in relationships before and they kind of have an idea of how to treat somebody well in a relationship. Like, they've made dumb mistakes, like, you know, forgetting your birthday and forgetting your anniversary and that kind of thing. And they don't do that. Like, they've learned better. And Mr. Big doesn't want to give Carrie any of that. Like, none of the benefits.
Have you gotten to the point where he talks about how he was previously married?
Mm-mm.
So there's
I haven't yet.
have you had the 3-way episode?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so there's an episode where
wait, isn't it an episode where Carrie needs to go into a storage closet and she goes in there with 2 guys and then a rumor spreads around the college that she had a 3-way in the closet with the 2 guys and then nobody wants to be her friends anymore? Is that the episode?
Sadly, no. Sadly, that would be a hilarious episode for a TV show. And eventually, if they make your story into a TV show, then that will be a great episode. But so what happens, I think, is Charlotte is dating a guy who wants a 3-way.
Why is Charlotte always dating these guys who like ask her for things that she's not super into?
Yeah, like what was
That's
it?
like
Episode 2,
one.
she was dating a guy who wanted anal, and she was like, I don't know if I want to do that. And then they're like, if you're not comfortable with it, say no. And then she says no, and the guy's like, okay. Like,
yeah,
but she's like
I don't
she's like very uncomfortable.
Or does she just not have the ability of deciding what she is and isn't comfortable with without consulting her friends?
No, that's more what it is. But like then
because like most people kind of know whether they want to do that or not. I have the feeling that most people kind of know in their heart.
Yeah, see, that's the thing with Charlotte is that Charlotte, I feel like she wants a lot of these things, but she doesn't like being the idea of being the person who wants those things.
Huh.
Yeah, but anyway, we were talking. Who are we?
I don't know. What was she raised, like super Catholic or something?
No, I think she's very waspy. She seems very waspy to me. I don't know. What were we talking about? We were talking about the 3-way.
We were just getting done hating Mr. Big.
Yeah, no, we were getting into the 3-way episode where one of the characters. So Charlotte's dating a dude who wants a 3-way, and so she's like, "Oh, okay, you know what? That might be fun." And then so they go to a party to try to, it's like a masquerade ball or something. So they're like, okay, we're going to try to pick up a girl for a 3-way at this masquerade ball. Meanwhile, Carrie asks Big if he ever had a 3-way. And then Big is like, yeah, my ex-wife and her best friend. And then Carrie eventually, that's how Carrie finds out, I think, that Big was married. And then she goes and like seeks out Big's ex-wife. And then like talks to her about stuff. And then she's like, were you ever married? And then she's like, yeah, the dude cheated on me with my best friend after I had a 3-way with him and my friend. And then he cheated on me with her afterwards. And I'm like, Carrie, this is your dude. And she's like, oh, but he learned better. Like, I'm just like, no. He's just a tool. Oh, but there's one more thing in the episode where Samantha has like a gay friends who are a gay couple, and they're just like, we want to try it with a woman. And then so she's about to have a three-way with this gay couple, like this like fully like cisgendered like two gay men who are never who've never like, you know, been with a woman before, and they're like, yeah, we think it would be kind of fun. And then they like it's very funny. And then they like get into the and they're just like, actually, we don't want to do this, but thank you for coming. Yeah.
No, so what I wanted to say though, so you're telling me that Carrie tracks down Mr. Big's ex-wife and doesn't tell her, like, she's not like, oh, I'm dating your ex. She just like befriends her under false pretenses to get her to give up the dirt on her ex-husband, Mr. Big?
Low key, yes.
Okay, listen. So when women do that kind of thing, there's a word that people like to apply to women who do that kind of thing, and that word is crazy. Like people, if you do that kind of thing, people will call you crazy, and will stigmatize you if you're the woman who does that kind of thing. Like, you'll get very stigmatized very fast. I would like to point out that if Mr. Big weren't such a jerk, Carrie wouldn't have needed to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that she did a good thing or that she did a right thing, or that what she did is completely, you know, a good idea at all.
It doesn't end as poorly as you think it would.
You shouldn't deceive, like, yeah, but that's not ethical. Yeah. Like, you shouldn't deceive people and get them to talk about their ex who you're dating. Like, that's not an ethical way to communicate with other people in the world that we share.
Yeah.
However, Carrie wouldn't have needed to do that if Big hadn't been such a fucking jerk.
See, here's the thing, is that if you feel the need to do that, that's more of an indication that your relationship is having a problem that you're not going to be able to solve by getting these deets from somebody else.
I just a note on when we call women crazy and what that really means.
Yeah.
Okay, now that I got my super feminist soapboxes out of the way.
I didn't feel like that was like aggressively super feminist. I thought that was more just like common sense than anything else.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So so finally, I want to get to one topic. I think we touched on it earlier. So this show came out in 1998. I think it ran from 1998 to like 2004, 2005, something like that. So it started more than 20 years ago. How have things changed in 20 years? Like, if you saw them, I guess they did announce that they're doing a remake, but if you saw like this show is a new show now, how do you think it would be the same? How do you think it would be different?
I think at least one of the four women would be canonically bisexual or lesbian from the beginning.
That's a fair observation. I also think not all of them would be white.
Yeah, that was going to be my second point. I think that would be a casting decision that would be done differently. Just from the get-go. Like, this is an extremely white show. And
it's set in New York, which is a very diverse city, and there's very few non-white characters in it. Like, they'll show up from time to time and have an arc, but they won't be main, you know.
Yeah. So I think that could change off the top. I also think that we wouldn't have four cis straight women. I think there'd be at least one character who's bisexual or somebody who's lesbian and kind of goes through the same girl troubles as the rest of them have boy troubles. I think that could be actually a really cool plot point.
Right, because there was that episode in the beginning where somebody assumed that Miranda was gay. And
they set her up with this other girl who worked for the law firm.
And then she was like, oh,
they were a cute couple.
Yeah. Well, and then Miranda was like, well, but they want me to be in a couple if I can, so that I can get professional advancement, because they want people who are family oriented. And so she kept like dating this woman who the woman knew that Miranda wasn't gay.
Right. Everybody was on board with this little deception.
Yeah. So it wasn't like a leading her on type situation that people will do. But that was a very funny plot line. I think that it would have been very easy. I think if the show had been made, it had started like about 5-6 years later, they would have leaned hard into the cringe element of that, because I think that this was before cringe comedy really became as big a deal as it is now, with shows like The Office doing cringe comedy. That was like, where it's funny because you're laughing at it, but you're laughing because it's uncomfortable. It wasn't quite that situation. It was just sort of like a funny situation.
I would also be interested to see, I think it probably wouldn't be the same show at all, because this show is about like consumerism, but I would be interested to see the same premise, but the four main characters being like service industry workers, people who waitress and bartend 2 or 3 different nightclubs.
Well, have you seen Girls
to make their...
on HBO?
No, I haven't.
It's sort of similar.
Is that kind of it?
It's sort of similar to that. I don't know. I didn't care for it as much because I found almost all of the characters to be completely unlikable. But that's just me. It's very similar to that with Lena Dunham.
Okay. I've heard of it. I just haven't seen it. No, I think the show would be more diverse, but I would watch a 2020 version of it.
Yeah, I think that Girls on HBO was, I think, supposed to be the millennial version of Sex and the City. I didn't care for it as much personally, but I think that but when you're thinking about it, because you're friends with women, I'm friends with women. How common, if you have a friends with 4, say you have a group of 4 women, what are the chances that none of them are at least a little bit have a little bit lesbian tendencies, bisexual, pansexual tendencies?
I mean, in Portland, the chances are 0.
Yeah, so that's the sort of thing.
I don't think I could put 4 straight women in a room in Portland.
Yeah, so that's the sort of thing where you're how do you find with me, because I'm how do you... It's
kind of hard to get 4 straight men in a room in Portland.
How do you find 4 100% will not I'm not at all
not flexible, nothing.
Yeah, I mean Samantha is the most flexible, but she's only in it for if it's a 3-way or something like that. So she's not really interested in dating women.
That seems so improbable.
Yeah.
In our generation where people are comfortable and able to come out, and where being bi isn't as stigmatized as it once was.
Yeah. No, but there is an episode, I think it was very early in the show, where Carrie is dating a bisexual guy and she just can't handle it.
Huh.
Or no, you know what? I think it was...
It was only 20 years ago.
I think it was season 2 or season 3. No, what it was she was dating this dude who is bisexual, and she's having a difficult... Because, already she has some issues with insecurity. We know this from the show.
Oh, yeah.
She has some issues with insecurity, and she's talking to this guy, and she's been going out with this guy, and she's like, okay, well, now I don't just have to compete with all of the women, I have to compete with all of the men too. That's too many people.
Okay, yeah, that's a common... Yeah, that's a common, it's a common thought that people have.
Yeah, and then she goes to his she goes with him to his ex-boyfriend's birthday party where everybody's super pansexual and everybody is everybody's ex, and she cannot handle it. It's really funny.
Well, yeah, then again, is that a product of the time, or is that a product of Carrie's insecurity?
I think it's
because that's
both.
Insecurity is something that does kind of define her.
Yeah,
that's kind of her her hallmark flaw.
And that's the thing that Big realizes, and that's why he keeps going after her over and over and over again, is so that he can be oh, she's insecure, she'll come back to me. And then every time she rejects him, I'm just yes, Carrie, thank you for rejecting him. And then every time she's actually, I'm going to go back to Big, I'm just Carrie, what are you doing?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. Overall, it's kind of nice to have a TV show where people have real flaws.
Yeah.
I wish she I wish she wouldn't do that, because it drives me crazy that she gives this guy the time of day.
Yeah.
But it is, I don't know. It's nice to see a TV show where people have actual real life flaws.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of it for things that we wanted to talk about. Do you have, so you like this show?
Yeah, I kind of felt like this show, so this is probably going to be the most controversial thing I say on this episode, but I feel like the show is Fleabag if it was actually more fun to watch.
And
I'm
I've never seen
I know
Fleabag.
people... I feel like people are going to hate that because people love Fleabag, and I didn't like it.
I had it recommended to me and I haven't watched it.
I just wasn't a fan. I kind of felt like this show was kind of what I was hoping Fleabag would be. So yeah, I did like it. I'm gonna keep watching. Yeah, I'm gonna keep watching it.
What I found I found the first season, I couldn't tell whether it was good and I didn't like it, or whether it was bad and I did like it. But then once you get into season 2, season 3, and the character development starts getting stronger, I found myself enjoying it more. So I'm gonna keep watching to the end, which is an endorsement.
I'm gonna keep watching this. And I also think that maybe I didn't realize how much like wine was going to be in this show. There's like so much alcohol in this show.
That's got to be making you mad because you can't drink for another 2 months.
Bad. See, I was never a big drinker, so fortunately it's not that big of a deal. But I would love to do a follow-up episode about this once I can do it with a drink.
Yeah,
I think that would be fun.
So, what are your final thoughts about this show? Final thoughts, grand conclusions.
Actually, my final thought, I wanted to read you a quote that I found about this show.
Go for it. I'm excited to hear it.
So, here's what I thought summed it up really well. Sex and the City allowed women to wage war culturally, but only within their feminine territory. Dating, sex, fashion, food, and shopping. And I thought that said a lot. Because it recognizes the impact that the show had. And it recognizes that in a lot of ways this show does model feminism. And it also recognizes that the show is a product of its times. And that the medium that they kind of had to work in to get some of these feminist ideas on television was through hyperfemininity and traditionally feminine, things like high heels and dresses. I thought that said it really well because it's not a judgment of, what they should have done. It's just an explanation of what they did do with this show.
And speaking about, the time that it came out, that's probably the best that we can sort of expect from a show like this.
Yeah, I don't think it's reasonable to expect things to have been any better in the late 90s.
No.
There are things that are said and done in the show where people now, we kind of go, oh, that wouldn't go over now. But I do think that they were trying to be inclusive, and I do appreciate that. And I hope that the reboot is more inclusive in a couple main ways that we mentioned.
Yeah, and it doesn't come across, when they are trying to be inclusive, it doesn't come across as being patronizing. It more comes across as, well, this is the language that they would have used to talk about this 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to get into what is the next assignment. So Sadie doesn't know what this is going to be yet, but basically I went on Amazon and...
You went on where?
Amazon.
Okay.
What?
Amazon?
Amazon.
Okay.
What do you say? Amazon?
Yes.
Amazon?
Yes.
Okay, it's the Amazon River.
Is it?
Amazon, Parmesan.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that's interesting.
So I went on okay. I went on
Jeff Bezos' website.
Yeah, I went on Jeff Bezos, the second richest man in the world's website, and ordered something for Sadie. This is also a first because we're doing a bunch of firsts. Second, I guess this is the second episode of the second homework episode of the new year, but this is also the second time when we're doing a first. And this is the first time that I have asked Sadie to review a book. Okay. Or a book. Yeah. Or books.
Oh my gosh. How many books do I have to read before next time?
So, Sadie, do you want to? This is a series of books that was probably one of the, along with Harry Potter, one of the most significant series of books of my childhood.
Okay, shall I open my package?
Yeah,
here?
she hasn't opened the package. She doesn't know what it
This
is
is gonna
yet.
be ASMR.
Too bad this isn't a video podcast. You guys can just hear it. So I'm gonna.
I can't do video podcast. I'd have to do my hair.
Yeah, and also it would mess it
Oh.
up. Have you? Did Chuck kick you, or did you see what it was?
I saw what it was. This is like 12 books.
Is it 12 books? Okay, well,
It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books.
okay. So, Sadie, would you like to tell the wonderful people what I have sent you?
So this appears to be a book series beginning with the book The Adventures of Captain Underpants.
The Adventures of Captain Underpants. The absolute
It's got a little man on the front. He kind of looks like a thumb wearing
The hit-
underwear and a cape.
the biggest hit of the Scholastic Book Fair. When I was a kid, you get money for the Scholastic Book Fair that they have at your school. You go to the book fair, you buy the new Captain Underpants book. Now, I will tell you, so what we've got there, I think I had them send to you, was like the original series that went up until, like, I want to say, like, because he added more ones on later, but it would be like, but the ones that he added on later were like when I'd grown out of them. But, you know, I think the first one came out in like 99 or 2000. So I was like perfect age for this sort of thing. But
This
if
is the first 10 books, looks like.
so does it include, so it's going to be Captain Underpants and the Attack of the Talking Toilets, Captain Underpants and the one with the ridiculously long title, Captain Underpants and the perilous plot of Professor Poopy Pants,
Yes.
and I can't
So
remember.
on and so forth.
Yeah, so I have there. You will read them very fast. A lot of them are not like full pages of like text. It's not like novels, like text novels. It's like there will be some text and pictures and then a flip-o-rama.
So this is not going to be like the time my friend loaned me the first book in the Game of Thrones series and then called me the next day to see if I was done with it yet.
No.
Okay.
This is, you will blow through these books because there is not a lot of words in them. But you will really enjoy them.
And then we will review however many I get through.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well, this seems like fun. Some nice light reading.
yeah, and also when your child gets to be old enough, these will be wonderful books for when your child is interested in potty humor.
That's just, see, I was never allowed to do that kind of thing. Like, I was not allowed to do potty humor at all.
Oh man, when I
Yeah,
was a kid, these books were such bangers.
So I remember seeing these. I remember seeing other kids have these or seeing them at the library, but not being allowed to read them.
Man,
So
that's such a
the-
bummer.
Well, even though thinking about my kid having that is a little bit of a mind bender, but willing to check it out.
Well, it is a present for both you and your child. You know, I think your husband's probably maybe a little bit too old to have been into these when they were first coming out. But
Probably he's a few years older than us.
he's what, 7 years older than us, 5 years older than
6.
Yeah, so he might know them, or he might have been too old. He was probably like within the right age group when the first one came out. So I don't know if he read the ones after that.
He was first generation Harry Potter,
Oh, okay. I
Like-
was also first generation Harry Potter.
but like wanting the new book like when it came, like the day it came out, like midnight books.
Oh yeah, me. I did that too.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we should talk about that sometime.
We will talk about that sometime. And
Okay.
when we do, you will be able to listen to it on the Leaving Eden podcast. That's enough for today. This episode went a lot longer than I expected, but it lent itself to some excellent discussion. Yeah. So my name is Gavriel Hacohen, GAVRIELHACOHEN. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. On Facebook and Instagram, it is Leaving Eden Podcast. On Twitter, it is at Leaving Eden Pod. Sadie, do you want to plug your social?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Sadie Carpenter Music, or on Twitter at Hell Yes Sadie, or on TikTok at Sadie Carpenter 1, where I am still planning on doing some TikToks at some point.
Yeah, and if you want to listen to the song that is playing right now. If you're listening to this right now on the day that it comes out, then you can go and listen to that on Monday, January 18th. We're releasing the song, but what you can do is you can go and you can pre-save the song by going to my Spotify or whatever a streaming service that you use. It is available for pre-save. The song is called Rolling River of Time. Look it up. It's GAVRIELHACOHEN. The song is coming out for streaming, for download, for all of that stuff on Monday, January 18th. We sincerely hope that you guys have a nice day. Stay safe, stay healthy. Bye-bye.
But old rolling river of time, you healed me in too many days. No regrets, no confusion.